room is a little thin.
This what?
This room is.
Yeah.
If there's people sitting on that side, it's hard to walk by, which is silly because it's a big room. But
It's also a pretty
oh
big
yeah,
table.
or the table should
Right.
just be a little thinner. Should a single table like this would be. Okay, let's go. We have to finish the Sicha today. Okay, we just started Hay. Right? The Rebbe just asked the question. The question in this matter. The Chavis Levavis says that bitachon is a state of calm based on the fact that a person trusts the medivus. I'm reading the last paragraph on the first column on page 4. The medivus and the chesed, l'misha roila, l'misha eina roila, and that line is the most important. The tremendous loving kindness of the Eibush for the person who deserves it and doesn't deserve it. So that, of course, brings up a rather major problem. Well, what happened to schar v'einish? Why should a person who doesn't necessarily, however we understand what it means not to deserve, now obviously that we assume that has something to do with their service of the Boruch, or how serious it is, or lacking in seriousness it is, it's not so clear. And certainly not up to us to judge whether someone's fit or not. Our basic assumption is everybody is just fine, right? Because if the Baal Shem Tov said you want to say something good about someone, say it about the Eibishter. You have this taiva to say something bad about someone, which you should never ever say, but if you have to do it, so say it about yourself, don't say it about anybody else. Right? That doesn't mean you should say it about yourself either, but so the Chavis Levavis says that even someone who doesn't deserve it, again, whatever that means, still should have absolute bitachon and be completely calm that the Eibusher is going to take care of the situation and in a way that is good in what you and I call teva nira v'nigla, revealed good. And the Rebbe, of course, asked, well, how do we explain this? What happened to schar v'einish? There's such a thing called schar v'einish. There is such a thing, and it's not only relevant to the world after this world. So some shaykhus of it in this world, bracha that comes down as a result of good deeds in this world, etc. So what's the foundation of such bitachon that even the person who doesn't, so to speak, deserve it should get some sort of miraculous intervention of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in some event to bring about a positive result? So we read the first paragraph in Hay, the Yuvan Zeh, we'll read it again. And then the Rebbe is going to explain it very, very clearly. In a very challenging way, but clearly. The Yuvan Zeh, Pi Divrei Rabbeinu Tzemach Tzedek, Shehu V'kam Apamim Al Yidei Kfei Yishmei Chami Admar, we read this yesterday. Sha'ana le'echad, and he answered one. She'ischanen etzloi la'ere rachmim al chayla mesukin chos v'shalom. Someone came to the Tzemach Tzedek and asked for a bracha for someone who was very, very ill. And the Tzemach Tzedek answered the famous statement, Trach good v'tzayin good. Think good and it will be good. Now, again, I said yesterday, it's not just a bumper sticker. That's a nice, pithy little thing to say that would be, good in a shop that sells T-shirts and bumper stickers and coffee cups with your name on it. Okay, nice. Think good and it'll be good. Very nice. But the Tzemach Tzedek wasn't kidding. Saying then the think good, obviously, a synonym for the think good is a bitachon. A bitachon in the Eibishter, and it'll work out. Now, how does that work? Shevte v'yeter, umashmi midvarav. Understood from the simple pshat in the words of the Tzemach Tzedek. She'etzem ha'machshava l'tova, the essential positive thought. And then the Rebbe says very clearly, that's bitachon. Tavi l'toitza'is tevis will bring to positive results, and those positive results are b'teva nir v'nigla, revealed good. Not positive results, of course, whatever happens is good. We understand that. But we don't want the good that is only good on some spiritual level. We want the good that's good on a physical level. V'nir levar kavanos devarim. So now the Rebbe is going to explain this, and his explanation of bitachon is really quite astounding. Chayvus of bitachon, the obligation of bitachon, shenitz tavinu aleh, that we were commanded regarding it, eina rak prat, is not simply a detail, v'teitza'ah mederech memela, and a necessary consequence, miha of the faith, shakol bidei shemayim, that everything is in the hands of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, v'shakadosh Baruch Hu chanun v'rachum, and a Kadosh Baruch Hu is gracious and merciful. Because if that's the case, the ein tzarich b'chiyuv miyuchad al zeh. You don't need it. There's no reason for any specific obligation, because that's called a emunah. When you have a emunah in the Eibishter, what does that emunah include? Well, yeah, it has something to do with what the Eibishter is all about. Just, I believe in God. Okay, what's he about? I have no clue, don't know what he is. I mean, he's nasty, he's nice. I don't know. No. Emunah is understanding something about the Eibishter. So I appreciate that the Eibishter is good and caring and loving. That doesn't mean he's not tough. He's also that. Okay, so that's called emunah. That's called believing in an Eibishter. There's a being who's in charge of everything, and everything that happens is an expression of his will, and that's hard. That itself is hard enough to wrap our heads around. Right? And that expresses itself in absolutely every single detail of your life. Not meaning the emunah you have also, but the very fact that the Eibishter is the Eibishter. Whether I understand it, I don't understand it. Whether I believe in it or I don't believe in it. Every single thing that happens to every single person is a direct expression of the Eibishter's Hashgacha Pratis. He's running the world. Okay. And he's kind. And if that's bitachon, then I don't need another mitzvah called bitachon. That's called emunah. And we said very clearly, bitachon and emunah are two different things. Now, obviously, you can't have bitachon without emunah. But you can have emunah without bitachon. Elo, chayvazu, and now the Rebbe says something very, very fascinating, because sometimes people say, oh, he has a lot of bitachon. That's like saying he has a lot of tefillin. Right? Say someone has a lot of emunah, that you can say. That's completely reasonable. The way the Rebbe is going to explain bitachon, to say someone has a lot of bitachon is saying, oh, they have a lot of tzitzis. Because bitachon is a specific aveda relative to a specific situation. Like tefillin is a specific aveda relative to a specific situation. If it's the daytime and you haven't yet put on tefillin, take your tefillin out and put them on. Right? And what if you have put them on? So then you have no obligation to put them on again. Right? Okay. They're not, they're not relevant. You did that. That's not where you are right now. You're doing something else. That's very different than emunah. Emunah is a very important component in every breath that you take. It's its own specific avoda. Shemahusa ugidra, its being and its description. Sha'adam yismak, we're going to quote the Rebbe's Love's third time, and the Rebbe is going to explain what he means by this. Sha'adam yismech v'yishan al Kadosh Baruch Hu, that a person should rely and lean on a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ad sheyashlich kol gereloi b'yad Hashem, until he throws his whole lot in the hands of Hashem. Now, obviously, do not let your Yetzer Hara think that, oh, that means I just have to sit there. Or the Rebbe is saying that I don't have to do anything and I just sit there and wait for God to take care of the issue. That's obviously not what the Rebbe means, and the Rebbe is going to say that explicitly later. But who's in charge? Ultimately, who decides what the result of any particular situation is? The Eibishter and the Eibishter alone. Okay. Now, do I have my input in that? Of course I have my input in that. Perhaps the single most important part of that input is the bitachon. The only part of that input? No, I have to get out of my chair and do all sorts of things also. If I don't do that, then the bitachon... I mean, theoretically, if I was the Baal Shem Tov, then I could probably do it without doing anything. Right? The Baal Shem Tov used to, there's this, I don't know how often he did this. There's a story that the Baal Shem Tov went to raise money for, he used to raise money for poor families. So he was raising money, he knocked on the door of someone and walked away. So the gentleman came to the door. I have no idea what it looked like. I have this image, there was a path, away from the door, and the Baal Shem Tov was walking down the path. He came to the door, Whether there were stairs down from the door or not, I have no clue. But he came to the front door and said, "Excuse me, can I help you?" Did he know it was the Baal Shem Tov or not? Did he know that this is the Baal Shem Tov or not? I don't know. But and the Baal Shem Tov turned around and said, "Yes, I'm collecting money for poor families." So the gentleman said, "Okay, I'll help, but can I ask you a question? You knocked on my door and walked away. How did you expect to get the money?" Baal Shem Tov said, "I have to do something in Eilam Hazard to bring down the bracha. Knocking on the door was enough." If you're the Baal Shem Tov, knocking on the door is enough. You and I have to do a lot more than knock on the door, because we relate to the existence of the world as much more real than the Baal Shem Tov. But the Baal Shem Tov experiences that everything's the Eibishter. And so all he has to do is knock on the door to bring down whatever he has to bring down. You and I have to do a lot more. Okay, but the Baal Shem Tov also has to have bitachon that that's going to work, and you and I also have to have bitachon that whatever we do is going to work. That's also part of it. Ukemesha Kosiv, Hashlech al Hashem Yahavka, which you know from Pata B'Shalom, it's that season. Hashlech al Hashem Yahavka, who and he will sustain you. She'ein lo shum mishan, there is nothing to lean on. Be'olam bilado yizvak, except the Eibishter. That does not mean I don't do anything, but ultimately I understand that the bottom line is the Eibishter decides what's going to be. V'yesh leimer, shezui hakavana b'masha kosev b'cheves halavavos. Could say that this is the intention that the Cheves halavavos had when he said, "Shebitachon hu ke'eved ha'asur asher hu b'beis habor b'rshus adonai." The Cheves halavavos brings a mushal, someone who has to rely on someone else. He has no choice. Right? And who is that? An eved, servant, that's held in the prison, Beis Habor, right? The pit, but the prison, in the domain of his master. His master put him in jail. So now, who is the only person that has any control over the well-being or the future of this Eved? The master. Right? He's completely and totally at the mercy of this master at this point, because he's locked up in the master's jail. Shekol bitachon shel aser, all of the trust of this prisoner, rak al adonai. It's only on the other. Now, the Cheves halavavos does not think that Eilam Hazeh is a prison and the Eibishter is holding us in prison, etc. He's bringing this as a mashal to show complete reliance on one being. There's only one person in this story who has any control whatsoever as to what's going to happen to this guy in that cell, and that's the person who's in charge. Shemasar b'yada, he's given over in his hand. V'lo yuchal adam lazikar la'iloi, and no one can harm him or help him. Zulasa, except the master. Zulasa means other than him. Zulat is the other one. Right? So that's bitachon. We don't know how that works yet. We don't know how we express it. Let's not ask any questions. Let's let the Rebbe keep explaining it. Okay, but bitachon is first and foremost the complete and total reliance on the Eibishter, the understanding that the resolution of this situation, and the Rebbe's already told us, it's an avodah, it's a specific avodah, and we're going to see that specific avodah is shaykh to a specific situation. It's not a general state. Again, yes, you can say about someone he has a lot of emunah. You can't say about someone he has a lot of bitachon. He has a lot of tefillah. Right? He works hard on his bitachon. Okay, so he's expressed incredible bitachon in a number of very difficult situations. So you can say that. You can say that. Mm-hmm. But he has a lot of bitachon. What does it mean he has a lot of bitachon? It means he has a lot of emunah. He believes in the Eibishter, and if that belief is necessary to produce another avodah called bitachon, which is a response to a particular situation, and there might be a different response to the same situation. We talked about that yesterday. All right, let's go a little further in the Maimon. We'll talk about that more. But bitachon is an avodah. The Rebbe says the language avodah bifnei atzma. Now that's in that point the Rebbe is saying it's different than emunah, but it's also an avodah bifnei atzma relative to a particular situation, as we'll see. Lochen move on, therefore it's understood in the brackets. Shebitachon zeh b'Hakadosh Baruch Hu. This bitachon that someone has in the Eibishter, hu ba'ofen, is such a way she'ein hamatzav hativi mishana klal. The natural situation doesn't make any difference. Right? Meaning it's more reasonable or less reasonable to recover from this particular illness. The doctor will generally, doctors like to do this, especially oncologists, love statistics, and they'll give you a percentage. Okay, now that's nice. But a percentage, you're either 100% alive or 100% not alive. Now, the doctor means that, with the treatment that we're doing, we have a very good chance of having a positive result, which is, I understand that would be a nice thing for the patient to hear, as opposed to the patient hearing, look, the situation is, Alpiteva really not very good at all. Okay, now what's the difference between those two relative to the Jew who's got to deal with it? Just how powerful is his bitachon going to have to be? Is he going to have to move mountains with this bitachon, or is he going to have to just sort of stay the course with this bitachon? Right? Now, that Jew has to realize as he's laying in that bed in that hospital, that when the doctor comes in with good news, it has to be that the good news is a result of his bitachon. Because if his bitachon is the result of the good news, then that's not bitachon. That doesn't mean it's not good. We're still very happy there's good news. But the bitachon should produce the good news, not the other way around. I have bitachon because the doctor said 80%. Well, that's not bitachon. Maybe that's bitachon in the doctor, but it's not bitachon in the Eibishter. 80% means, okay, so I now have to move it to 100% with my bitachon. The doctor says 40%, I have to move it to 100% with my bitachon. The doctor says no chance, I have to move it 100% with my bitachon. Can I do that? Theoretically, yes. Is that easy? I don't think so. Let's see what the Rebbe says about it. And if, even naturally, nimna, he's prevented that he should be extracted from this situation. Meaning, al pi teva, there's no way out. He relies on the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He's not limited by the laws of nature at all. Okay, so now you and I understand that intellectually. I can understand that that's true, and I can certainly understand that a tzaddik can pull that off, because we all know stories of tzaddikim who did do things that were just completely beyond teva, right? And it's also very interesting to note that most of the tzaddikim who wanted to get out of the inferno of Europe in the 30s did, 30s and 40s. Two of our Rebbeim, the Belzer Rebbe, the Bobova Rebbe, the Ger Rebbe, the Rebbeim got out. Now they had help. They had more help than your average Jew. But they somehow were able to, with their bitachon, to overcome that darkness in a way that your average Jew might have had an extremely difficult time doing. Could he? Theoretically, yes. Do we judge that Jew unfavorably because he didn't? Oh my goodness gracious, you're asking for a superhuman expression of bitachon that's beyond anything we can even imagine. But were there people who did it? Well, there are all sorts of people who did it. And what's really fascinating is most of the Rebbeim did it. But what did some people choose? And this is what we were talking about yesterday. There were Rabbanim, not so much Chassidus Rebbeim, but there were Rabbanim of yeshivas. There's a story, I don't know who it was, a couple of Rabbanim who got out. They were in America. They went back to be Meiser Nefesh with their students. They decided their Aveda was Mesiras Nefesh. It's not for us to decide right or wrong. Meaning their Aveda was not bitachon. Their Aveda was Mesiras Nefesh in that point. That's what they decided. Who am I to decide that they're wrong? I assume they're serious people. There were a lot of people who chose, again, big tzaddikim who chose bitachon. The Bluzhever Rub tells us an unbelievable story. I think it's the first story in the book about him. It's not really a book about him, but half the stories are about him. There's a book called Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. And the stories about him are true, because everybody knew him. He lived in Borough Park for 40 plus years after the war. Maybe even more. He passed away 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. The Bluzhev Rav was standing at a ravine. We unfortunately all know the scene because we've all seen the pictures. Standing at a ravine, lined up with a bunch of Jews, about to be shot and pushed into the ravine. And the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, said gleefully, because what could be more fun than doing this, said anybody who wants to jump over the ravine now and save themselves can jump over before we shoot. The Bluzhev Rav, now you couldn't jump over the ravine, right? I mean, if you're an Olympic long jumper, you can't jump over the ravine. The Bluzhev Rav turned around and jumped over the ravine. When he got to the other side, he saw a 20-year-old young Jewish man. I don't think he had a yarmulke, I'm not sure, standing next to him. So he looked at him and said, how did you get here? So the young man asked the Bluzhev Rav, I'm young, how did you get here? He said, I held on to the coat of my father and he carried me across. His father was in Gan Eden. I held on to my father's coat and he carried me across. The kid said, I held on to you. He jumped across the ravine with this kid on his lap, and he lived to tell it. I don't know about you, but I don't think I could pull that off. Right? That's called bitachon. I'm going to jump across this ravine. There's nothing stopping the Eibishter from getting me to the other side. There's no objective reason that I shouldn't get to the other side. Does that mean that the Eibishter has to do a miracle for but if I even think for a minute I have a 95% chance of success, then I have a 0% chance of success. Why? Because I think the Eibishter can only do it 95% of the time. So I don't have a moon on who the Eibishter is, and I don't have bitachon that the Eibishter can do it because I think he can only do it 95%. The Eibishter can do anything he wants, and he can do it 100% of the time. Does he want to get me over there? Well, that depends on me. So the Bluzhev Rav managed to get over there. How do you do that? I don't know. Laser nanas on a little closer to home, and also a little less obviously miraculous. Said the reason he made it through 20 years in the camp was he slept like a baby every single night because he had absolute surety that he was getting out, because the Frierdiker Rebbe told him in the 30s, before the last time he saw the Frierdiker Rebbe, before the Rebbe left Russia, the Rebbe said, you're going to get out of Russia and you're going to make it there to Israel, which was a ridiculous thing to tell a Jew in 1930 in the Soviet Union. Especially him, who was being hounded by the NKVD in those days, the KGB later, right? Okay. And he was put in jail soon afterwards. And he spent 20 years in Siberia. And he lived to tell the story. And what did he say kept him alive? He slept every night, like a baby, on his plank. Why did he sleep? Because it was calm. He said most people were kept awake, they couldn't sleep because the things you saw in the day were so horrible and so terrible that it was just hard to fall asleep at night because you never knew when you would be next. Right? And you'd be working in the forest and you'd fall down because you were tired and they'd shoot you dead. If you stop working, they'd just shoot you and leave you there. Right? And I guess the wolves ate you. I don't know what happened to the person. Right? So you see this day in, day out, and then you couldn't sleep at night and you'd be too tired to work and then you would fall down. And he said, I slept like a baby every night. Why? Because the Frierdiker Rebbe told me I'm getting out. So his bitachon was based on the bracha that he got from the Frierdiker Rebbe. So he had absolute emunah in bitachon that everything's going to work out. And he did. He made it out. But there were obviously miracles along the way, but he said very, very clearly, I slept at night. I had no problem sleeping. I knew I was only in here for a certain period of time. He had a 10-year sentence. At the end, the last week of the 10-year sentence, they made up another charge and sentenced him to another 10 years. So he was there for 20 years. For that reason, they had no children. They had one child who passed away in childbirth. For most of their child-rearing life, he was in Siberia. And he and his wife came here together. Bitachon. And this itself is the foundation of the bitachon of a person. Shakadosh Baruch Hu yativ loy b'toiv v'nir v'nigla. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do good for him, with revealed good, Gamim eina roy lechesed zeh, even if he's not deserving of this chesed. So now, how does that work? We still don't understand that. Ein ha-perish bitachon. The explanation of bitachon is not shema'amin, that he believes shekeven shechazdei Hashem, that since the loving kindness of Hashem, hem bli madida v'agbola, are without limit, bein leroy, bein lemi she'ein roy, whether or not a person is deserving of it or not deserving of it, lochein, therefore, hu yekabel es chazdei Hashem, he will receive great loving kindness from Hashem, bli shum aveda mitzidei, without any aveda on his part. So that's not what bitachon means. Why? Ki lefi zeh, I'm sorry about that, it's not so clear. I see the whole right of the thing. I'll do my best. Ki lefi zeh, bottle kol inyan de schar v'einish. This does away with the whole notion of schar v'einish. No, it has to be aveda. Oh, so now this is very interesting. So therefore what? The positive result is a reward for the bitachon. In this particular say, even if you were to judge this, not us, right? We don't judge. But I'm saying, even were this person to be judged relative to his general behavior, he might not be deserving of the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in any particular situation because he's really, he's a normal guy. He's actually normal minus in his relationship with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he doesn't deserve any special favors, this guy, based on that. His bitachon in this particular situation, the fact that he was faced with a difficulty and found in himself a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that was so powerful that he had not one single doubt at any point in the process that the Eibishter is going to take him out of this situation and everything is going to be so good. He was completely calm, and he actually had a Sudas Haidah before it even started. Okay, that guy, what's his so-called reward for that Aveda? The Eibishter will do it. I mean, it's not an expression of schar v'einish. It's not a bittul of schar v'einish. What's he getting rewarded for, so to speak? That avodah. Relative to his general state in life, where is he holding? I don't know. He's a 4, whatever that means, right? Okay, and 4s don't get special favors. Yeah, but on this he was a 10. That's an amazing thing.
Well, so does that mean that because of his davening, because of his earnest davening, really?
It's not just davening. Right? It's all sorts of things. It's more than just. It's all. Also, I assume he's going to daven.
And would that be like also taking a halakha or a thing where I'm going to do more mitzvahs or I'm going to. Because then it's almost
we have to put it in real life terms. The person has been diagnosed with a deadly disease, God forbid. He is completely calm, simchadik, has no doubt whatsoever of the positive result of everything he's going to go through. He is a beacon of light sitting there in the hospital room. Right? One of the things... I'm not talking about myself. It just happens to be that once I was diagnosed with something that you're not supposed to have. So I had to undergo a very serious operation, and it was a rather long process. So it happened right when the attack in Bombay happened, because I remember I was at the Levaya, and was talking to a friend. And he knew I was going to the hospital in maybe a week. So it was a week or less, a week. The beginning of the next week is when I went in on a Sunday. So he said, you should make a Sudas Haidah before you go in. You should make a meal of thanks for the Eibishter for all the miracles he's going to do for you before you go in. Not after, before. Thank the Eibishter for all the miracles he's going to do before you even go. So we did. Everybody, I couldn't drink l'chaim. I had to go to the hospital next day, and they had to start prepping me for all this stuff they were going to do to me. So I took a couple of sips. But every we made us for bringing in our house Motzi Shabbos. It was Suda Saidah for all the miracles. The guys were singing the good and having a blast. Right? I have no idea whether or not I had enough bitachon throughout that process. I have no idea. I don't care. I'm alive. I don't care whether it was because of my bitachon or because it happened to be that this operation usually works. And Baruch Hashem, I don't care. What do I care? Right? Stick a thing in my side and see whether the turkey's cooked. I mean, I don't care. Was there an Aveda? What was the Aveda bitachon? Absolutely, 100%. Did I succeed? I don't know. I don't honestly. I don't, and I really don't care. Right? Almost all of my grandchildren have been born after that, and I know them, so I don't care. But was the Aveda bitachon? No question. Did I try? Yes. Were there moments of doubt? Yeah, there were moments of doubt. Not so many, but there were. Right? I remember when I realized very, very clearly that I'd had some doubts, even though I, wasn't aware of them. When they do the operation and then they check you out, right? And so it takes a while for the tests to come back after the marriage. So the doctor wasn't giving any results of the tests. So why isn't he giving results? So of course, what thought might creep into your mind as to why he's not telling you the result? Because it's not a good one. He doesn't want to tell it to you because you've got to recover. Oh, so that thought evidently did creep in, even though I wasn't letting myself aware of it. Because when he came in with the good news, I let out a like this, and he went, "What's wrong?" I said, "No." Which is interesting, right? So obviously, on a certain level, I failed that test. I don't, fine. But was the general reality in that little space in the hospital for the next 4 weeks one of simcha? Yes, there's no question about that. That's what it was. All the visitors, Yud Tes Kislev for bringing in there. Right? Obviously, I wasn't drinking. Right? Went in the hospital. Yud Kislev got out on Hey Davis. Auspicious days to go in and come out. The Didam Natzach was Hey Davis. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Right? Some Bachim came from Mayanot with a bottle of mashka. I don't know how they got the bottle of mashka past security and the thing, but anyway, they managed to come in with a bottle of mashka, and they sat in the little. In those days, now it's much nicer. But in those days, there were 5 people with little curtains in each room. So they sat in my little curtain place, and they were drinking l'chaim. I touched it to my lips, but I wasn't at that point. I don't even know whether I was eating food. I think for 8 days I had only water going into me, which was very, very interesting. How you don't get hungry. I was not hungry at any point, which was bizarre. Right? Had this question as to whether or not I should start drinking coffee when I can start drinking again. Why not just stop drinking coffee? Like I'm off coffee, whatever, uncomfortable situation you're going to have if from getting off the addiction to it. So that's gone. I mean, there were worse pains than that happening. Right? So, but I had a cup of coffee, and here I am. My wife, once they told me I could drink, my wife came up to visit me. She used to come every morning to visit. So spend time there. So she came up with a cup of espresso from the thing downstairs. But here's a cup of coffee.
I thought that was the best espresso.
No, it was interesting. It didn't taste good, actually. Well, I don't know whether it wasn't a good espresso. I just was not used to tasting stuff. I'm not sure. But, Okay. So the bitachon is it's not just it's not only my davening and only my hachlatas. It's a general state of complete calm that everything is in the right hands and everything's okay, right? Like the Chavis Lava said about the person in jail. He has one person he can rely on. Okay, so a person could theoretically have a tremendous bitachon in the doctor. They're paying for the best doctor. They have absolute trust in this doctor, and they have no doubt that the doctor is going to be able to pull this off. Okay. There's doctors that are pretty good doctors. Right? But that's not our bitachon. Yeah, of course you have to also trust the doctor. There's no question, but then not bitachon in the doctor. You trust the doctor, that the doctor's a good doctor and he's going to do the operation the way the operation's supposed to happen, whatever it happens to be. But the bitachon is in the Eibishter that the result is going to be what the result is going to be, and even if the doctor messes up, the result will still be a good result because, part of what the Eibishter hopefully will make sure happens is the doctor doesn't mess up. Right? It's all part of the deal. Okay. That's called bitachon. Right? And so it's not just I'm going to be frummer. No, it's finding God in a situation so that that's all there is, and you realize it's all dependent on Him, and that's very, very hard. That's a real avodah. And any doubts that creep in are showing a lack of appreciation of the truth of the situation. So trach good is not a nice little avodah. Oh, I'm going to just think positive thoughts my whole life. No, it's a response to a specific situation to try to bring about a positive result. And the Rebbe says very, very clearly, if the bitachon is complete, the result will be positive, which is very challenging. Because that means if it isn't, so then that means the Rebbe says it explicitly later on. I want to get there. We're going to stop documenting more. That if there's not a positive result, it means there wasn't enough bitachon. Is that an indictment of the person? Of course not. What kind of silly thing is that? If I look at things that way, I'm going to be beating myself up all day, and that's just not true. Right? Those people who didn't make it out of the war, they had no bitachon. What bitachon? The bitachon necessary to do that is superhuman. Maybe that level they didn't have. Some people did. Again, as we said earlier, the Chassidus Rebbeim who wanted to get out, got out. Two of our Rebbeim, Bobov, Belz, Geir. Alexander Rebbe didn't get out. That's why you've never heard of the Alexander Chassidim. There were 250, 300,000 Alexander Chassidim in Poland before the war. Probably never heard of them. Rebbe didn't get out. You've heard of Ger. There were probably 300, 350,000 Ger Chassidim before the war. Almost all of them killed. 10, 15,000 after the war. But the Rebbe got out. How many Ger Chassidim today? Biggest group of Chassidim here in Yerushalayim. Baruch Hashem. The Rebbe got out, so they... If the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't get out, what happens to the Lubavitch? How many Rebbeim didn't get out? There was also Rebbeim who didn't get out. How many big Rosh Yeshiva didn't get out? Okay. But some, interesting enough, some did. And the biggest ones did, which is also interesting. I don't know the story of what happened with the Alexander Rebbe. I'm not sure. Tzanzer Rebbe got out. Well, the Tzanzer Rebbe, when he got out, he lost his whole family. A wife, I think 10, 11 children. Came out, moved to Netanya. Started again. I don't know how these people did this. I just know there's so many stories of people who lost everything and then just got out and started again. Who was I talking to the other day? Someone who was born in the DP camps. Their parents had enough bitachon, had enough emunah, bitachon, whatever it took, to start again, right? What they just saw, and they said, there's still life? Wow. Unbelievable. Okay. So, these people are amazing people. Just pushing amazing people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the Muna, it's like bitachon seems to take on you're responsible for the result.
Just pretty heavy.
Yeah. Is that not taking the responsibility away from Hashem? Is it?
Exactly. It's giving him the responsibility. If I don't think it's completely dependent on him, then bitachon won't work. It's exactly the point. It's exactly the opposite. The Eibishter is giving you complete and total control. Why? Because he has complete and total control, so he can give it to you. If you don't believe that he has complete and total control, and you give any control whatsoever to that doctor, to that Soviet, to that Nazi, then they might win, God forbid. Well, hopefully the doctor wins, right? But the Nazi or the Soviet might win. The Eibishter gives you the power to do it. Oh, okay, say that. Why can he do that? Because it's completely and totally dependent on him. And that's where the bitachon comes from. But the Eibishter gives it right back to you, which is really astounding. But he's the one who has it to give it. If I don't believe he has it, then he can't give it, can he? Even if it hasn't, it's impossible al pi derech hatev. Okay. Just heard a story. My son knows these people. I told the story at a Shabbos table. One of our sons was visiting. He said, I went to yeshiva with him. This just happened fairly recently. A couple from here in Eretz Yisrael needed a very serious operation for one of their kids, very young child. And the place to do it was in Boston. So they somehow put together enough money to get to Boston and to do the operation, etc. So on their way to Boston to do the operation, they had gone already to have the kid checked out by the doctors there, and the doctor said, yes, he needs this operation, etc., 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 and they set up a date for the operation, and they came back here, they went back to America, and they were on their way up to Boston, but they stopped by the Rebbe, went to the oil. And he wrote a letter, and she wrote a letter. He tells the whole story. He wrote a letter that the operation should go well, etc., etc. His wife wrote a letter. They were sitting beside each other writing these letters. His wife wrote the letter and said there should be no need for an operation. He should be completely healthy and everything should be fine. So he saw her letter. He ripped up his letter and signed hers. They went into the Rebbe, they davened, they ripped up their letter, put it on wherever you put it there, and they flew up to Boston, drove up to Boston, whatever they did. They got to the hospital, 2-3 days for the operation, this little kid, they had to check him out, do this test, that, no operation, he's fine. Whatever is there is gone, he's fine, go home. Doctor said, I can't understand it, I can't explain it, but he's fine, Baruch Hashem, you don't need an operation, go home. This happened 6 months ago to someone who my son knows, and he knows the story. When I told the story, he said, oh, I went to yeshiva with him. That's what happened? Wow. Because I heard it was going to. So I guess they had a lot of bitachon. When she wrote the letter, she had bitachon. He had enough emunah to know that I need some help from above. She had enough bitachon to say, this is dependent completely and totally on the Eibishter, and I want the Rebbe to help us push the buttons above that have to be pushed to make this happen. Just like Rav Nanas believed completely and totally in the fact that when the Frierdiker Rebbe told him nothing's going to happen, then the Eibishter will make sure nothing's going to happen. He didn't believe in the Rebbe and not the Eibishter. That's silly, right? He believed in the Rebbe's understanding that this is what the Eibishter wants, and then the Rebbe's going to help him out, right? Yes, God does it that way. Why? I don't know. Could God do it alone? Of course he can do it alone. He could also give us the Torah alone. He could split the Red Sea alone. He could do all the Makkos alone. For some reason, for whatever reason, he likes to involve Moshe Rabbeinu in all of this. Why? I don't know. But he does. That's how he runs the world. He runs the world with someone named Moshe Rabbeinu. That's how he got us out of Egypt. That's how we conquered Eretz Yisrael. There was some guy named Yeshua. God cannot conquer Eretz Yisrael without Yeshua. Of course he can. He can do whatever he wants. But he doesn't want to do it that way. Okay, say them. I don't know. So they got this, they went to the Rebbe and they asked for some help from above, and evidently this woman had absolute bitachon that everything was going to be okay. And Baruch Hashem, they pulled off some pretty serious, what you and I would call a miracle with their child. Come, let's go further here. Ein a perish bitachon shemaymin. It's not only that he believes, right? Because if he believes that the Eibishter will do goodness, whether I deserve it or not, then that's mevatel schar v'einish, after the parentheses. Ela bitachon hu avoda v'yagia b'nafshe. Vehi, and that avoda mevia, that's what brings eschaz Hashem. Haba'im, that come ketotza'ah, as a result, mi avedis v'yagias ha'adam, from the tremendous effort and aveda of this person, livtayich b'Hashem, to trust the Eibishter, and only the Eibishter. Al Yadei Sha'adam, the Rebbe says absolutely clearly, right here, Al Yadei Sha'adam Seimech Be'emes, by virtue of the fact that a person relies truly, U'ba'emet Nishmasin, from the depths of his soul, Rak ala Kadosh Baruch Hu Levad, only on a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ad She'ena Doyed Klal, to such an extent that he is not worried at all, completely calm, which is what the Chavis Levav said at the beginning. How did this arousal, Gufa itself, Paelis, causes Shakadosh Baruch Hu misnag imay, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that word that you can't see there is mitnaheg, acts imay with him, but in the same way. Mida keneged mida. You show complete and total trust in the Eibishter and understanding that the Eibishter is the sole arbiter in this particular event. He'll act in kind with you. His appreciation, so to speak, of that bitachon.
What's that last word on the last line? The first word on the last line.
Last line, lulei. Mitnaheg, lulei, we haven't read it yet. Shemeitiv imay, that he'll do good with him. Gam im, even if lulei zois, were it not for this particular avodah, this bitachon that the person is showing right now, ein a roy lezeh, he's not deserving of it. Take his life as a whole and his avodah as a whole, and you'll say, okay, he's a normal guy. He's not nothing special. He goes to minyan every day. He goes to mikveh, tries to learn a little chassidus. Is he a serious, pneumistic guy? No, good guy, solid citizen, right? I mean, I understand. This guy deserves miracles. I don't know. Okay, in this particular situation, he showed such a tremendous connection to the Eibishter and appreciation of what reality is really all about, that the Eibishter acts with him in kind in that particular situation. That's just an amazing thing the Rebbe just said. Keep reading. V'zeu, and this is Teichen HaTzivui B'tach B'Shem. This is the content of the Tzivui B'tach B'Shem. Now, just one thing that means bitachon is probably something that a person should involve themselves in only in a situation where it's absolutely clear that there's a better result and a worse result. Right? That's what you're talking about, which job you should get. It's better to be employed than unemployed. Have bitachon, the Eibishter is going to get you a job. No doubt whatsoever in your mind, the Eibishter is going to take care of you, he's going to get you a job. Which one? I don't know, just apply to a bunch of them and see whichever one happens, right? Because again, do I know this is the right? How do I know? Right? In most instances, I don't know whether bitachon to make it through the traffic jam, to make it to the airport in time, trakut v'zayin good, the Eibishter is going to do a miracle, the traffic is going to clear up, you're going to make it to the plane. Yeah, maybe, it depends. I mean, but like we talked about yesterday, maybe I'm not supposed to be on the plane. How do I know exactly what the Eibishter wants from me? Maybe the whole Indian is the Eibishter put this traffic jam in the way so I won't make the plane because I'm not supposed to be on the plane. Why? Well, not just because the plane's going to crash. Most planes don't crash. For whatever reason, it's better that I'm not on the plane. And I missed that plane. I went on another plane. And you happen to meet someone on the second plane and you mentioned you had a conversation with them and the person ended up putting on tefillin once a week. Okay, so maybe I'm supposed to be on the second plane. How do I know? I don't know what's going on. The Eibishter is running the world. Okay. When it comes to health, I would assume bitachon is pretty clear, right? That being alive is better than not. Okay. I can say, well, maybe it's better to die. No, it's not better to die. It's better to be alive in Elam Hazeh doing mitzvahs, so we don't want to die. Okay, so then the bitachon, stay alive. Right? It does certainly seem from the Tzemach Tzedek story that the bitachon of one person can affect another person, right? Because the Tzemach Tzedek, I don't imagine the sick person went in to ask for the bracha. It sounds like someone else went in to ask for the bracha. Mm-hmm. And he said to them, trach good. Now, did he say, what if the person's in a coma? They can't very well trach good, right? So can I trach good for them? I guess so. Right? I guess. Right? But it's not so simple. This is not just, the odd positive thought. This is an avodah that is, non-stop. You'll get a headache from the avodah because you're working so hard, trying to make sure that you're staying connected and not losing sight of the goal and what you're trying to do. It's not some, nice little, in general, I have a positive attitude. No. Positive attitude is also good. Dr. November is not here right now, but every doctor will tell you that a patient with a positive attitude is going to have a better result than a patient with a negative attitude. There's no question. That's absolutely clear, I wish you could say that you can believe what's written in medical journals, right? You used to be able to. That's in all the medical journals. They'll all say that, which is an amazing thing. Okay. But here, the Rebbe is taking that to an extreme in terms of explaining, what in the pneumis, what's really going on. Let's try to go as quickly as we can. We have 5 minutes. I want you to see. So we still have to understand the story with Moshe, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Rebbe brought this to explain Moshe. We also want to see where the Rebbe wants this bitachon to be, because here we are all talking about, the sickness, etc. The Rebbe wants this also to be in that which we know a good result is what's supposed to be, and that's in our Vedas Hashem. Bitachon in our ability to serve God properly. That I know is supposed to be, right? I can't say, well, maybe I'm supposed to miss the plane. Maybe I'm not supposed to serve God right. No. That's not a possibility. Okay. So yes, we can talk about it in terms of parnasa, we can talk about it in terms of health, we can talk about it in terms of children. The three things in Gashmias, which the Eibishter gives us, which are very important and very dear to us. Okay. But there's also Veda. V'zeu toichen hatzivui, the column on page 5, left column. Sha'adam tzarich lahashlich ha'shahavah, he has to throw his bundle. Ala kadosh baruch sheyativ lei v'tov v'nir v'nigla, that he will do good for him and revealed good. V'kasher u'semich ach v'rak ala kadosh baruch levad, and when he relies only on the Eibishter, mibli la'asos cheshbenis, without making any accountings. Im efshar lo linatzel, is it possible? Is it not possible? What are the chances? Right? I remember, I'm sorry again talking about myself, but I apologize. But at the end of that whole process, so I became an organic farmer. I was growing something organic in me, right, which I wasn't supposed to grow. Right, there's things that are good to grow and things that aren't good to grow. It was organic. No GMOs or whatever they are. Right, it was completely organic when I was growing in there. It's also very tiny. So at the end of it, so the doctor, of course, has to tell me, okay, Baruch Hashem, things fine. And then he mentioned a number, a percentage of something happening in the future. So I looked at him and said, like that. It's like a high number. It wasn't a high number, but it seemed like when you're talking about those issues, it seemed like a high number. He started to laugh. He said, I'm an oncologist. 3% of the people walking in the street are future patients. Now, do you relate to yourself as having a 3% chance of developing some deadly disease? No one thinks that way. Do we all? Yes. Who thinks that way, right? So he gave me a number a little bigger than that, which sounded like a big number. He said, everybody's 3%, so don't worry. You can't live that way, right? A 3% chance of developing, deadly disease X. I mean, who lives that way? There are people who live that way. They're still walking around with masks, right? But, most of us are normal, healthy people who just, okay, Beseder, got to get up in the morning and make things happen, right? 3% chance of dying, oh my gosh, don't breathe on me, right? Okay. You have 100% chance of being alive, because you're alive. So right now you're alive, so live it and enjoy it and thank the Eibishter for it. Azai, if the person is in this place where he's throwing his bundles, again, relative to a particular situation, the Rabbi told us that it's an avodah, specific avodah relative to a specific situation. Right? Azai on Hogim, right? Therefore, the behavior with him, milamaila from above, mida keneged mida, is measure for measure. Shekadosh Baruch Hu shemer alav, Kadosh Baruch Hu guards him, merachim alav, and is merciful. Gamim al pi cheshbon, even if al pi some sort of accounting, ein roy lekach, he's not necessarily deserving it. Shiyeh tevlei, that it should be good for him, b'tov v'nir v'nigla dafka. V'zeu perish divrei tzemach tzedek, and this is the explanation of the words of the tzemach tzedek. Bitachon atzma yavi l'teitzos toves, that the bitachon itself will bring to positive results. She'ena inyan stadi lavad b'bitachon. It's not some secondary idea within the context of bitachon. Elazehu geder bitachon. That is the description, the definition of bitachon shenistavinu aleh. Trachgut v'zayin is what bitachon is. And again, that's going to be relative to a particular situation. It's not just having, they used to call them rose-colored glasses. Which is a good thing, to look at the world in a positive way. Of course you should be positive. But that's emunah. Why you should be positive? Because God's good. Okay. What about a particular situation? In a particular situation, it might be that a particular avodah is called for, and that avodah is bitachon, right? Bitachon that everything's going to be okay, and that can express itself in the and it's a long process. Okay, your wife is pregnant. Okay, so some people can spend their whole day worrying about all the things that can go wrong. Right? Another person can have a basic, calm bitachon throughout the whole process, without it being, just a basic bitachon. The Eibishter is good. This is all going to work out. Everybody's going to be healthy. The baby will be healthy. My wife will be healthy. Everything will be fine. They're calm because they're trusting in the Eibishter that this will all be good, as opposed to reading on the internet all the things that can go wrong to make themselves nervous. Right? Someone asked me if I looked on the internet to see what operation I had. Why in the world would I want to do that? The last thing I wanted to know is what they were doing to me. All I wanted to know is it's over and it's done and it's fine. I want to know what they're doing to me. Why would I want to know that? Now I understand how people might. I get it. I'm not, but personally, it's the least interested. My wife unfortunately knew enough, being a doctor. I was in a state of blissful ignorance. She was nervous for both of us. She was working on bitachon. She was very hard. She used to come the first week I was barely there. So I was aware of this, but I became much more aware, obviously, as time went on. She came into the room every single morning, and she learned the Sicha with me. She learned the Sicha of the Rebbe with me every single morning. I was just like laying there. I had 8 tubes coming out. Hanukkah, they started taking out the tubes. I was Beis Shammai. I went from 8 to 1 over Hanukkah. I explained this to them at Hanukkah time, what they were doing, the doctors. One of the doctors came in Yud Tes Kislev. I told him we should drink a l'chaim. He said, I'm a misnagid. I don't celebrate Yud Tes Kislev. Only in Israel is the doctor going to tell you he's a misnagid. He doesn't celebrate Yud Tes Kislev, so he's not going to. Turns out that I think I told you the story. He's the Cheskel Landau. He's a Ben Acher Ben from the native Yehuda, so he has the yichus of a misnagid. So good for it. Okay, let's go further. Any questions after we just see a little more, because the Rebbe's not going to explain the story of Moshe. We'll see it. I'm sorry it's a little late, but we want to finish. I don't know whether to finish the whole thing inside. Al pi anal yishleim shezui kavanas akotzer b'parsha seinu. This is the whole story in our parsha. What was our question? Why we told that Moshe was afraid? The Rebbe said something absolutely astounding. Shemasapra al Yudase shel Moshe k'sheshama mi'ivri halargeni kasher aragdas hamitzri, when that Moshe was afraid when he heard from the Jew, are you going to kill me like you killed the Mitzri? Lashmienu yesoid hanal v'midas bitachon. We are being told this fundamental principle about bitachon in that story. Shabitachon atzma, that the bitachon itself, mevi v'gerim liyeshuas Hashem, brings the salvation. Umiklal hein, and from the yes, and this is probably the most challenging line in the whole Sicha that really we should talk about it at greater length, but we don't have time. Miklal hein atashomei alav, from the yes you hear the no. The fact that a person isn't extracted from a difficult situation, we talked about it a little bit before. Because he was lacking bitachon. Now that is, again, that's not necessarily an indictment of a person. It might be the level of bitachon necessary is really quite astounding. Okay, so chas v'shalom, the Rebbe is saying something about people in Europe during the war, etc., etc. It's not what the Rebbe is saying. Okay, but bottom line, if I can bring it about, so then if I didn't bring it about, so it means that I was lacking in bitachon. Okay. It might be the bitachon necessary to bring it about was just something beyond, something incredible. Okay, is that theoretically possible? Yes. Okay, so what's that got to do with our story? Well, think about our story for a second. What happened? Moshe goes day 1, kills the Mitzri. Goes day 2, runs into Dasan and Aviram. They say what they said. Says Moshe was afraid. Where did Moshe go?
Right back
to Paro's palace. What's the next line in the Torah? Moshe was afraid. Paro heard. Why did Paro hear? Because Moshe was afraid. Wow. If Moshe had bitachon that what he did was the right thing to do, and absolutely nothing negative is going to come as a result of it. What would not have happened? The next pasuk, v'yishma par. That's what the Rebbe says. Pshat in the story is. Wow, that's just too much. Now, what would have happened in history if Moshe hadn't run away? Who knows, right? I mean, this all had to happen some way. And this is what it says, that Moshe was afraid that this thing is known. The tekef lachreze, and the next pasuk immediately after this, v'yishma paro, Paro heard. V'yavakesh larigis Moshe, wanted to kill Moshe, v'yivrach Moshe, Moshe ran away. Cave and Shemesha Hayayare Nafshay, since Moshe was afraid, Veloy Batach Bashem, and he didn't have absolute bitachon in Hashem, Shaloy Yave Shum Hezek, that it shouldn't come any damage, Chas v'Sholom. Mi Pu'uloy Sav HaToves, from his positive actions. What he did was a good thing to do. Lahagen Alish Yisrael, to defend the Jew. Mi HaMitzri Shikaseh, from the Egyptian who's hitting him. And the second thing he did, the Lachiach, and to reprove Shnei Anoshim Ivrim Nitzin, these two Jews that are fighting. But it gamzeh got him, so that there's lack of bitachon. Got him. V'yishma Paro is the davar, the Paro heard about it. V'yavakesh larigis Moshe, v'lutzach livroich mimenu. Wow. Then in the next paragraph, I'll just tell you outside, the Rebbe says, and it's, you might even be able to say that that's why it says v'yemer, he said that this thing is known, that not only did he think it, he actually said it with words. He expressed clearly his lack of bitachon by saying this thing is known, said it, not just by thinking it. All right. Then the Rebbe says, and if he had absolute bitachon, so the whole thing would have been forgotten. Now let's just see the hara. Last line in the first column. Mikan lamadnu gam hara l'maisa b'feil. So we learn an instruction in our own behavior. Kisha'adam pegeh b'manias v'kuv. Now what's the Rebbe going to talk about in terms of aveda? Kisha'adam pegeh, when a person encounters manias v'kuvim, obstacles, al shmiras Torah mitzvahs, in his keeping Torah mitzvahs. Alav ledas, he has to know, shebittul manias v'kuvim elu, doing away with these obstacles, Telui Beib on Hagosar is dependent on him and his behavior. Dim yeshle bitachon gamur b'Hashem. If he has absolute bitachon in the Eibishter, Shehu Yisbarach Yazor, Shiyah Toiv, that the Eibishter will help him overcome these obstacles, and it should be good. Ad Shehu, to such an extent, Shehu b'menucha gemura, he's completely calm, bli shum daiga klal, without any worries. He's just waiting to see how the Eibishter is going to pull this off and how the Eibishter is going to help him overcome these obstacles that he's feeling in his avodah. He has to do what is up to him. Obviously, it's his avodah, but he also, if it weren't for the Eibishter helping us, we wouldn't be able to do it. We can move on. Menucha gemura bli shum daiga. We can move on, the Rabbi says. But Yachadim said, together with this bitachon, oisa kola talui boy, he's doing everything that's dependent on him, but derech hateva, within the context of nature, levato manias alala, to do away with these manias, these obstacles. Okay? So one of his he's having a hard time getting up in the morning. He asks the Eibishter for help, and he has absolute bitachon, the Eibishter is going to help him. Okay, he has to set an alarm. He has to go to sleep early enough the night before to make sure that getting up won't be so difficult. Right? Okay, he has to ask a few people, look, just make sure I don't, if please do me a knock on my door at 7, 7:15, 7:29 and 49 seconds, whenever it is, to make sure that I'm awake. Okay. He has to do whatever he has to do, but he also has absolute bitachon that the Eibishter is going to help him be successful in whatever it is that he's trying to do. He's trying to get rid of a particular taiva that he has that's bothering him, okay, so work on getting rid of the taiva, do everything possible. Also have absolute bitachon, the Eibishter is going to help him. Hare huftachnu, we were promised by the Tzemach Tzedek, trach good v'tzayin good, shechein yelefeil, that will actually be she yizbatlu kol hamanias v'ikuvim. So the Rebbe takes all this, which we'll talk about in terms of Gashmis, the Rebbe talks about in terms of Ruchnis. Also Gashmis, also Ruchnis. The story that Tzemach Tzedek is Gashmis. The Rebbe says, not here, the Rebbe says in other places, if that story is about physical health, all the more so spiritual health. She's batlu kolam manias v'ikuvim. All of these obstacles will disappear. V'toiv yela b'feil mamash. It'll be good for him in actuality. V'toiv and v'nigla revealed good. La'enei basar, that physical eyes can see. Lamatam yasar tfachim, that below 10 tfachim, meaning connected to the world, part of the world. And what's the ultimate expression of bitachon? Shame shebegulas Mitzrayim. And just like in Geulas Mitzrayim, Nemar, it said, Shebeschusa bitachon nigalu Yisrael Mitzrayim. In the merit of their bitachon, their trust in the Eibishter, that the Eibishter could take them out of this place even though it's impossible to leave. No one had ever left Mitzrayim before. Nigalu, meaning no slave was able to run away. And yet we're going to walk out 3 million at once. Ridiculous. Well, say there. Ridiculous if you don't have the Eibishter doing it for you. Now, not that we didn't have some help, the Eibishter did the miracles, etc. Now, how many of the Yidden were actually able to get to that point that they had enough bitachon that they actually got out? 20%. According to the minimalistic medrash. 2%, according to another day in the medrash. 0.2%, according to another day in the medrash. Right, three days. So we talked about this a few days ago, right? The Medrash, Rashi quotes. It says Alu Chamushim. They went up. Now Rashi says first shot is armed, Tachmoshet, right? Is artillery. So they went up Chamushim, armed, right? The second shot Rashi brings is that what they went up 1/5. 80% of the Yidden stayed in Mitzrayim. They died in Makas Choshech, and the 20% got out. Dasan Avim were part of the 20%. Okay, so what do those Yidden need? Enough bitachon that it would happen for them. That's all they needed. They didn't have anything else going on. Right? No mitzvahs, basically. Okay, we say they couldn't basically the night before. All right? Bitachon. Bitachon in Moshe and bitachon in the Eibishter. Emuna in Moshe and bitachon in the Eibishter. And easy enough, what does it say about them? Yaminu b'Hashem of Moshe Avdei. That's what it says. Shmeis talks about Emunah twice. Both times it's connected to Moshe, which is really interesting. Yaminu b'Hashem of Moshe Avdei, v'gam b'cha yaminu l'Elam by Matan Torah. Al derech zeh b'agula migola zu ha'achron. So too the gula from this last golus. Kediz b'medrash kedai hein legeula b'schar kivui. They are worthy of the geula in the reward for their hope, for their bitachon. V'chein ti'elanu, so it should be for us. Shebeschusa bitachon shebnei Yisrael. In the schus of the absolute surety of the Jewish people. Shekreiva yeshuasi lavoi, that my salvation is close. Zeichim, they merit. Shekadosh Baruch Hu yigalenu, that the Eibishter should redeem us. Bagula mitis v'shleimer, and the true and complete redemption be made to be ameinu mamish speedily in our days. Not as challenging as it gets, that one. Okay.